When the Declaration of Independence was signed, positing as a self-evident truth that all men are created equal, this was a radical step. It was not just a radical step politically, but a radical step spiritually for the human race. Now, why is that? Well, if you're going to posit in the founding of a nation that all men are created equal, you're not just repudiating centuries and centuries, even millennia, where a few people had the power and everybody else served them, but you are laying claim to the possibility of a nation, the possibility of a whole collective of people in which everyone should have the opportunity to thrive. Self-actualization is at the core of the vision here, but the self-actualization, not just a few, but for the many. And you follow that in the Declaration with the idea that God, the Creator, has granted inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Once again, the idea anybody should be what they want in life as long as it does not hurt anyone else. And that the role of government was to secure those rights. Now, the founders thought of themselves as Enlightenment thinkers. That's what they wanted. And they were thinking not just in purely political or economic terms, they were thinking in metaphysical terms. That's why so much of astrology and masonry and all of those kinds of things, these were considered gentleman arts to the people at that time. Look at your dollar bill and look at the Great Seal of the United States, which was designed by 5 of the founders. So the Great Seal of the United States is the following. It is the Great Pyramid at Giza, with its capstone returned. Now, in reality, the capstone has been removed. No one knows for sure where it is, but they do know what the capstone looked like. They know that it was gold. They know that in bright blue there was painted the great eye of Horus, which was in Egyptian mythology and Egyptian religion was the third eye, whatever your religious perspective is on that. And the light would touch the capstone in such a way that people from miles and miles away could know where the pyramid was. Now, archaeologists have not found it. There have been a lot of digs, there have been a lot of studies, there have been a lot of research. Wouldn't it be on that causeway between the pyramid and the Sphinx? Haven't found it. So apparently somebody took it. So one of the theories is that at a time of the decline of the great Egyptian civilizations, that some monks climbed up to the top, they removed it, and in the metaphysical tradition, it said that the capstone is buried somewhere under the sands of Egypt, and that when the capstone emerges, when it is found, when it rises, that will symbolize the enlightenment of humanity. So the sands of Egypt represent the subconscious mind of humanity. So our founders make as the Great Seal of the United States, the Great Pyramid with its capstone returned, and the words underneath, Novus Ordo Seclorum, which meant New Order of the Ages. And that is what this country was dedicated to. Now, what does that mean, the idea that everyone should have a chance to self-actualize? So the Declaration of Independence was saying we are cutting ourselves off from England, and this is our greater vision. And then the Constitution is saying, and this is how we're going to do it. So you have to have both. You have to say no to what you will no longer be, and you have to say yes to what you choose to be now. All of the freedoms articulated in the Constitution are there in order to protect our right to self-actualize. And whether you're talking about Jimmy Kimmel, whether you're talking about any of the other issues that are going on right now, what is being challenged here is the very idea. There are forces in this country, very powerful forces in this country, who are challenging the very idea that everyone should have a chance to thrive. And this is why freedom matters. Now, when it comes to free speech, I think what's important to remember is that in this country, you have a right to be wrong. Because what you want is to recognize that the design of the government is meant to reflect as clearly as possible the design of nature. And you know what? In life, you get to be wrong. In life, you get to make your mistakes. And so the idea of clamping down on free speech is part of clamping down on free thought. And how do you become who you're going to be? I mean, who among us has not said things we wish we hadn't said, done things we wish we hadn't done, but within the stricture of what is legal, what is within the limits of, what does not harm anyone else, you have a right to do that. You have a right to be wrong in this country. Nobody owes it to anyone to agree with them. Only in a totalitarian society. Hello, I'm going to say that again. Only in a totalitarian society. Get it? Hint, hint. Is everybody supposed to line up with the same kind of view? And if they don't have that view, God help them. They might do a tweet that says something else and they get fired. But let's not kid ourselves. This was not, for instance, in the Jimmy Kimmel situation. This was not just about, ABC. All of a sudden, one day, out of the blue, decided they didn't like what he said. No, that's not what happened here. What happened here is that Brandon Carr threatened them. The head of the FCC, which means an agency of the U.S. government, made it very clear to ABC, your business is going to be harmed if you don't get rid of this guy. And as Brandon Carr said, we can do it the easy way, we can do it the hard way. That's like a mafioso talking. Even Ted Cruz can't get more of a conservative senator than Ted Cruz, and even he said that. This is not an issue for the left or the right. This is an issue for all of us as Americans to recognize that freedom means there is no freedom if you don't have freedom to think what you want to think and do what you want to do and say what you want to say and pray if you want to pray or not and as you wish to pray. Freedom is like a big, big deal. There's a lot of talk about tyranny, but we got to talk not only about tyranny, we have to talk about freedom. It's just like you don't just talk about sickness, you talk about health. You don't just talk about war, you talk about peace. So we have to ask ourselves, what does this freedom mean to us? But freedom cannot be taken for granted, and that is what has happened in this country, because until very, very recently, I don't care if you had a Democratic president or a Republican president, there were certain aspects of U.S. freedom that nobody would ever question until now. So we the people must now respond. A free society is everything to us. We get to do whatever we want to do as long as it doesn't hurt anyone. Say whatever we want to say as long as it doesn't hurt anyone. And that doesn't mean hurt their feelings. That doesn't mean we hurt them by making them uncomfortable. It doesn't mean we hurt them by disagreeing with them. Freedom. It was made into almost like a quaint concept. There's nothing quaint about it. New order of the ages. Novus ordo seclorum. In which every individual has a right to self-actualize. Every individual has a right to spread their wings. Every individual has a right to soar. Which is why we should have universal health care, which is why we should have tuition-free college and tech school, all of that. But the issue right now, such a basic fundamental issue is being challenged right now that those specific policy things we can talk about on the other side of this awful chapter when we need to rebuild. And I hope we will rebuild on some much stronger foundations of adherence to the principles which not only have made this country great, but have made this country free. See you later.